right, welcome to the Tour Coffee Show. Good to have you all here with me again. I'm pumped up about today's episode. So what I've been doing is just to clear things up, I've been in these series of videos I've done. This is now going to be the third on premillennialism, that Christ will return to earth before his millennial kingdom. I've been defending it from a historical perspective. I've been showing that there's a pedigree in history for premillennialism. And look at the last two videos to kind of get my rationale for why I'm doing this. The first video was really the rationale. The last video, I looked at some of the early church fathers, mainly Papias. Papias was one of the big ones, and then we looked at Barnabas. And today I'm going to be looking at Irenaeus and Justin Martyr. So if you want to see what Papias and Barnabas had to say, that's not the Barnabas that lived during the time of the apostles, by the way. Again, see the last video to see that. All second century stuff. And this video is going to be second century stuff too. And what's been kind of cool is, and I don't know if I'll do more videos on premillennialism looking at it from other angles. What's kind of cool, I've been realizing, in the first video I talked about the rise of postmillennialism. And what's kind of cool is I'm starting to see the premill videos come out. I'm starting to see the premill guys push back, and it's very encouraging. So I'm hoping to offer a little bit of pushback from the historical perspective in this particular series of videos. So without any further ado, today we're going to look at Justin Martyr and Irenaeus. Irenaeus has a lot to say. I've got a lot highlighted, and I'm not going to read everything that he had to say. And I really don't know what I'm going to choose to read today. I'm going to kind of like I'm having a conversation with you. We're at the coffee shop having a cup of coffee, and I've got my study and I'm ready to go. I just want to say this, like my goal is actually pretty simple, to just read the quotes. And I want you to listen to the quotes because I think there is a lack of awareness of these quotes. They're in church history. You can get, this volume, the Ante-Nicene Fathers. It's a whole volume on the church fathers. I've got the whole, I don't got the whole set, but I have the Ante-Nicene Father set. So that's all before Nicaea, and that's kind of where I'm focused. And I'm really focused on the second century, but it's there. You can look at it. So I simply want to read the quotes to get you to think about it. Then maybe like, oh, did they really say this? And you'll look it up. Of course, I'm going to offer commentary, and it's human nature. I'll offer interpretation and stuff. But the point of this is just give you the quotes, okay? And you may disagree with some of the things I infer from it, but I'm going to try to not say too much. Like, I really just want you to hear the quotes. And so that could even be a little boring because I'm just going to be doing a lot of reading, but I want you to hear the premillennialism of the second century fathers. This is very important to me. Again, go back to the first two videos to get some more church fathers and some rationale for why I'm doing this. Very, very strong. It's the most well-documented position in the early church. We can't just give a lip service to that. That is a huge weight in favor of premillennialism. Doesn't settle the case. Doesn't settle the case. Church fathers can be wrong, but it's an important point that I think supplements the biblical arguments for premillennialism. So, coffee insert here. Now, of course, when I say the most well-documented position, I mean the most well-documented position on the millennium in the early church. So, without anything further to say, I'm trying to be a little creative and say something different from anything further to do. Whatever. Let's get started, is what I'm trying to say, and let's listen to what these early church fathers had to say. First, I'm going to read Justin. Because I've got one section from Justin and a lot from Irenaeus. So here's what Justin had to say. This is from chapter 80. Okay, it's Roman numeral LXXX, so I believe that's 80. This is from chapter 80 of Justin's dialogue with Trypho. And here it reads, And Trypho to this replied, I remark to you, sir, that you are very anxious to be safe in all respects, since you cling to the Scriptures. But tell me, Do you really admit that this place, Jerusalem, shall be rebuilt? And do you expect your people to be gathered together and made joyful with Christ and the patriarchs and the prophets, both the men of our nation and other proselytes who joined them before your Christ came? Or have you given way and admitted this in order to have the appearance of worsting us in the controversies? Then I answered, this is Justin. Then I answered, I am not so miserable a fellow trifle as to say one thing and think another. I admitted to you formerly that I and many others are of this opinion, and believe that such will take place, as you assuredly are aware. But on the other hand, I signified to you that many who belong to the pure and pious faith and are true Christians think otherwise. Moreover, I pointed out to you that some who are called Christians but are godless, impious, heretics, teach doctrines that are in every way blasphemous, atheistical, and foolish. But that you may know that I do not say this before you alone, I shall draw up a statement, so far as I can, of all the arguments which have passed between us, in which I shall record myself as admitting the very same things which I admit to you. For I choose to follow not men or men's doctrines, but God and the doctrines by him. For if you have fallen in with some who are called Christians, but who do not admit this truth, and venture to blaspheme the God of Abraham and the God of Isaac and the God of Jacob, who say there is no resurrection of the dead, and that their souls when they die are taken to heaven, do not imagine that they are Christians, even as one, as if he would rightly consider it, would not admit that the Sadducees or similar sects of, I'm going to try to say these, Geneste, Maristai, Galileans, Hellenists, Pharisees, our Jews, do not hear me impatiently when I tell you what I think, but are only called Jews and children of Abraham, worshiping God with the lips, as God himself declared, but the heart was far from him. But I and others who are right-minded Christians on all points are assured that there will be a resurrection of the dead and 1,000 years in Jerusalem, which will then be built, adorned, and enlarged, as the prophets Ezekiel and Isaiah and others declare. Now, few comments here. Trifle essentially challenges Justin, saying, do you really believe there's going to be a regathering in Jerusalem and that it's going to be rebuilt? And Justin says, yes, I do. Now notice that he also says that there are true Christians who have a different view. And so he does. So there were, we see premillennialism here, but we also see an acknowledgement that there were other views. And, this was not a matter of being a true Christian or not. So we can appreciate that from Justin. Then he also talks about heretics that deny the resurrection. You're a heretic if you deny the resurrection. Now, we know that our postmillennial and amillennial brothers that are Orthodox believe in a future resurrection. Orthodox premillennialists, Orthodox postmillennialists, and Orthodox amillennialists believe in the resurrection. No problem there. So it's among the of course, there are those that hold all these views that would be heretical in other areas. But those that hold to the triune God, to justification by faith, to Christ being the only Savior, those who hold those essentials, whatever their eschatology might be, so long as it does not deny the future resurrection, we could say we're all a part of the same faith. Okay, we may have differences of opinion and they may be serious, but as long as we believe in the future resurrection, we're of the same faith. So to be clear, the heretics that Justin is calling out are those who deny the resurrection. That said, though, it is not only the future resurrection that Justin believes, because towards the end of this dialogue, he says, but I and others who are right-minded Christians on all points are assured that there will be a resurrection of the dead and 1,000 years. This is what Justin believed. And look at what he says. And 1,000 years in Jerusalem, which will then be built, adorned, and enlarged. Justin believed in a rebuilt Jerusalem, as the prophets Ezekiel and Isaiah and others declare. This is what I want to say. When some dismiss, maybe that's a strong word, but I'm just going to use it. But when some just seem to dismiss advocates of premillennialism today, or when they want to challenge or kind of take away the historical pedigree for our claim for premillennialism. Now, I talk more about this in previous videos. See those. They'll kind of give lip service to the fact that the church fathers were there was premillennialism amongst the church fathers, but they were not dispensationalists. And I make a case in my other two videos that yes, dispensationalism as a system had not yet been developed. There's no question about that. But what do you do with the fact that Justin believed in a rebuilt Jerusalem? He believed in a restored Jerusalem, as the prophets had declared. Whatever you want to call that, the early church believed it. And no doubt, Justin did have a kind of replacement theology. There's no question about that, where the church was the new Israel. So we've got to acknowledge that. Want to be fair with the facts. But nonetheless, Justin believes in a rebuilt and a restored Jerusalem. That's significant. So is it dispensational to believe that there's going to be a rebuilt Jerusalem in the kingdom? Well, you can call it what you want. But there were people in the early church, according to Justin himself and many, that believed it, that believed in 1,000 years in a rebuilt Jerusalem. This is huge. You can call it what you want, but let's deal with it. All right, let's go to Irenaeus. And there's so much to share from Irenaeus, and I don't know what I'm going to get to. But let me start with Irenaeus chapter 28 and section 3, okay? And just again, so you know what version of the Church Fathers I'm in, this is the Apostolic Fathers, okay, edition 1, Justin Martyr and Irenaeus. It's by Hendrickson Publishers, okay? It's chronically arranged with brief notes and prefaces by A. Cleveland Cox, who's got a DD. So I think that's really, I mean, this is what it looks like, okay? So I'm on page, I might not always give you the page number, but I'm on page 557. So this is Irenaeus, his Against Heresies. I'm on chapter 28, section 3. And this is found in book 5 of Against Heresies. For as many days as this world was made, in so many thousand years shall it be concluded. And for this reason the scripture says, thus the heaven and the earth were finished and all their adornment. And God brought to a conclusion upon the 6th day the works that he had made. And God rested upon the 7th day from all his works. This is an account of the things formerly created, as is also it is a prophecy of what is to come. For the day of the Lord is as 1,000 years, and in 6 days created things were completed. It is evident before that they will come to an end at the 6,000th year. So it seems that Irenaeus is saying that the final era of history will be 1,000 years. Let's see what else we got. This is from Irenaeus chapter 32. I'm going to start at section 1 or verse 1. I'm not sure what to call it. I'm calling it section because they're kind of long for verses. If you could see like this between my fingers here, that's section 1. That's all that's highlighted. So that's why I'm calling it that. But here's what Irenaeus said. Again, a 2nd century father. Inasmuch, therefore, as the opinion of certain are derived from heretical discourses, they are both ignorant of God's dispensations and of the mystery of the resurrection of the just, and of the earthly kingdom, which is the commencement of incorruption, by means of which kingdom those who shall be worthy are accustomed gradually to partake of the divine nature. And it is necessary to tell them respecting those things that it behooves the righteous first to receive the promise of the inheritance which God promised to the fathers, and to reign in it when they rise again to behold God in this creation which is renovated, and that the judgment should take place afterwards. I want to come back to that part and comment on it, but I continue to read. For it is just that in that very creation in which they were toiled or were afflicted, being proved in every way by suffering, they should receive the reward of their suffering. And that in the creation in which they were slain because of their love to God, and that they should be revived again, and that in the creation in which they endured servitude, and that they should reign. For God, this is good. Keep reading. This is good. For God is rich in all things, and all things are his. It is fitting, therefore, that the creation itself, being restored to its primal condition, should without restraint be under the dominion of the righteous. And the apostle has made this plain in the epistle to the Romans when he thus speaks, For the expectation of the creation waiteth for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature has been subjected to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who hath subjected the same in hope, since the creature itself shall also be delivered from the bondage of corruption into the glorious liberty of the sons of God. Now that is all good. But let me just go back to this part. And it is necessary to tell them respecting those things that it behooves the righteous first to receive the promise of the inheritance which God promised to the fathers, and to reign in it when they rise again to behold God in this creation which is renovated. Irenaeus is saying that the saints, the same creation in which we suffered and persecuted under, is the same creation in which we need to reign in. In other words, there needs to be a future era where the saints are reigning. They need to reign in this creation. So this can't be talking about heaven, and it can't be talking about, I don't think it can be talking about the new heavens and the new earth. Some may argue that because there's questions of, some may indeed argue that because there's questions of when the creation, when the new creation happens, when the new heavens and the earth happen, is it a destruction or is it a renovation? And that gets you into questions even regarding the millennium, is because in Isaiah 65, when Isaiah talks about the prophecy of the millennium, there seems to be a sort of merging with the concept of a future millennial kingdom and a new heavens and a new earth that will later in the book of Revelation be made to be two distinct eras, though it would be a mistake to say that they're not related. But the point is this: what Irenaeus is saying is that the saints need to reign in this creation. They need to reign in this creation, renovated and restored. Now, postmillennialism believes that the saints will reign in this creation, but not after the resurrection. This, again, if we're reading it right, it seems to be saying that this takes place after the resurrection. For it is just that in that very creation in which they were toiled or were afflicted, being proved in every way by suffering, they should receive the reward of their suffering, and that in the creation in which they were slain because of their love to God, and that they should be revived again, and that in the creation in which they endured servitude, and that they should reign. And early at the beginning of this passage, he talks about of the mystery of the resurrection of the just, and of the kingdom which is the commencement of incorruption, by means of which kingdom those who shall be worthy are accustomed gradually to partake of the divine nature. So I realize there could be different interpretations on this, and Irenaeus has more to say. This isn't it. But what he is saying is that the saints in the resurrection, the saints need to reign in this creation as a reward. They need to, in the same creation that they suffered under, this is the same creation that they are going to reign under. The millennial kingdom is going to be a time of renewal on the earth. The earth is going to be renewed and restored. The saints are going to be resurrected to rule and reign with Christ. That's what premillennialism holds. And it looks like here that Irenaeus holds this. Well, let me just read more. Let's see here. What should we give it? There's so, I mean, there's, this is everything I got highlighted, folks. I mean, let's see here. Let me go to chapter 33 in Irenaeus' Against Heresies. For this reason, when about to undergo his sufferings, that he might declare to Abraham and those with him the glad tidings of the inheritance being thrown open, Christ, after he had given thanks while holding the cup, and had drunk of it, and given it to the disciples, said to them, Drink ye all of it. This is my blood of the new covenant, which shall be shed for many for the remission of sins. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of the fruit of this vine, until that day when I drink it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Thus then he will himself renew the inheritance of the earth, and will reorganize the mystery of the glory of his sons, as David said, He who hath renewed the face of the earth. He promised to drink of the fruit of the vine with his disciples, thus indicating both these points, the inheritance of the earth, in which the new fruit of the vine is drunk, and the resurrection of his disciples in the flesh. For the new flesh which rises again is the same which also received the new cup. And he cannot by any means be understood as drinking of the fruit of the vine when settled down with his disciples above in a super celestial place. Nor again are they to drink it devoid of flesh. For to drink of that which flows from the vine pertains to flesh and not spirit. I just gotta back up. Listen, he promised to drink of the fruit of the vine with his disciples. Let me fast forward. It talks about the resurrection of his disciples in the flesh. He's talking about a time after the disciples have been resurrected in the flesh. And he says, he can't by any means be understood of the fruit of the vine when settled down with his disciples above in a super celestial place. In other words, I think Irenaeus is saying this isn't talking about our spirits being in heaven. This is talking about the time when Christ's followers are resurrected and reigning upon the earth. Let's keep reading. And for this reason, the Lord declared, this is, Irenaeus Against Heresies 33. Now we're in section 2. And for this reason, the Lord declared, When thou makest a dinner or a supper, do not call thy friends, nor thy neighbors, nor thy kinsfolk, lest they ask thee in return, and so repay thee. But call the lame, the blind, and the poor, and thou shalt be blessed, since they cannot recompense thee. But a recompense shall be made thee at the resurrection of the just. And again he says, Whoever shall have left lands or houses or parents or brethren or children because of me, he shall receive in this world 100-fold, and in that to come he shall inherit eternal life. For what are the 100-fold rewards in this world? The entertainments given to the poor and the suppers for which a return is made? These are to take place in the times of the kingdom. The times of the kingdom. That is upon the seventh day. What? That was my what? Upon the seventh day, which has been sanctified, in which God rested from all the works which he created, which is the true Sabbath of the righteous, which they shall not be engaged in any earthly occupation, but shall have a table at hand prepared for them by God, supplying them with all sorts of dishes. He seems to be talking about a final epoch in church history, where the saints will be resurrected in the flesh and they will be at rest with Christ. And he's presenting it, it seems, as an earthly kingdom. They're going to have a table. They're going to be supplied with all sorts of dishes. Let me continue reading section 3. The blessing of Isaac, with which he blessed his younger son Jacob, has the same meaning when he says, Behold, the smell of my son is as the smell of a full field which the Lord has blessed. But the field is the world. And therefore he added, God give to thee of the dew of heaven, and of the fatness of the earth plenty of corn and wine. And let the nations serve thee, and kings bow down to thee. And be thou Lord over thy brother, and thy father's son shall bow down to thee. Cursed shall be he who shall curse thee, and blessed shall be he who shall bless thee. If anyone then does not accept these things as referring to the appointed kingdom, what's he talking about here? The appointed kingdom. Now, he's not talking about the current era. He's talking about a future time. The appointed kingdom. He must fall into much contradiction and contrariety, as is the case with the Jews who are involved in absolute perplexity. For not only did not the nations in this life serve this Jacob, he's saying this has not been fulfilled yet, but even after he had received the blessing, he himself going forth from his home served his uncle Laban the Syrian for 20 years. And not only was he not made lord of his brother, but he did himself bow down before his brother Esau upon his return from Mesopotamia to his father, and offered many gifts to him. Moreover, in what way did he inherit much corn and wine here? He who emigrated to Egypt because of the famine which possessed the land in which he was dwelling, and became subject to Pharaoh, who was then ruling over Egypt. The predicted blessing, therefore, belongs unquestionably to the times of the kingdom. Yes, I'm emphasizing that. The predicted blessing, therefore, belongs unquestionably to the times of the kingdom, when the righteous shall bear rule upon their rising from the dead. So when does this rule happen? After the righteous rise from the dead. When also the creation, having been renovated and set free, shall fructify with an abundance of all kinds of food from the dew of heaven and from the fertility of the earth, as the elders who saw John, the disciple of the Lord, related that they had heard from him how the Lord used to teach in regard to these times and say, the day will come in which vines shall grow, each having 10,000 branches, and in each branch 10,000 twigs, and in each true twig 10,000 shoots, and in each one of the shoots 10,000 clusters, and on every one of the clusters 10,000 grapes. And every grape, when pressed, will give 25 metriots of wine, if I'm saying that right. And when any one of the saints shall lay hold of a cluster, another shall cry out, I am a better cluster, take me, bless the Lord through me. In like manner the Lord declared that a grain of wheat would produce 10,000 ears, and that every ear should have 10,000 grains, and every grain would yield 10 pounds of clear, pure, fine flour, and that all other fruit-bearing trees and seeds and grass would produce in similar proportions, and that all animals feeding only on the production of the earth should in those days become peaceful and harmonious among each other, and be in perfect subjection to man. Okay, so I realize I'm just reading here. And I may not be enunciating everything as I should, and I'm kind of reading fast because I want to get this to you. But that's okay, because my point is to just show you what's here. And my hope is you'll go to the original sources. You'll look at this yourself. But let me just keep reading this section. Just please listen. Take this in. Look it up yourself. I've already given a lot of interpretation, but just please listen as I finish reading. This is section 4 of chapter 33. In these things are borne witness to in writing by Papias. Now remember, when we talked about Papias in the last video, if we watched it, Papias' writing exists in fragments. And Papias' beliefs are given to us through fragments and through other church fathers that talked about him. So here's a place where Irenaeus talks about Papias. And he says, and these things are borne witness to in writing by Papias, the hearer of John and a companion of Polycarp, in his 4th book. For there were 5 books compiled by him. And he says in addition, now these things are credible to believers. And he says that when the traitor Judas did not give credit to them and put the question, how then can things about to bring forth so abundantly be wrought by the Lord declared, they who shall come to these times shall see. When prophesying of these times, therefore, Isaiah says, that's Isaiah, the wolf also shall feed with the lamb, and the leopard shall take his rest with the kid. The calf also, and the bull and the lion shall eat together, and a little boy shall lead them. The ox and the bear shall feed together, and their young ones shall agree together, and the lion shall eat straw as well as the ox. And the infant boy shall thrust his hand into the asp's den, and to the net also of the adder's brood. and they shall do no harm, nor have power to hurt anything in my holy mountain. And again, that is Isaiah. He's quoting Isaiah. He says in recapitulation, wolves and lambs shall then browse together, and the lion shall eat straw like the ox, and the serpent earth as if it were bread, and they shall neither hurt nor annoy anything in my holy mountain, saith the Lord. I am quite aware that some persons endeavor, now this is Irenaeus again, I am quite aware that some persons endeavor to refer these words to the case of savage men, both of different nations and various habits, who come to believe, and when they have believed, act in harmony with the righteous. I'm going to come back to that. I'm going to read it again and finish this section, and then I'm going to come back to that. But listen to what Irenaeus says. I am quite aware that some persons endeavor to refer to these words to the case of savage men, both of different nations and various habits, who come to believe, and when they have believed, act in harmony with the righteous. But although this is true, now with regard to some men coming from various nations to the harmony of the faith, nevertheless, in the resurrection of the just, the words shall also apply to those animals mentioned. For God is rich in all things, and it is right that when the creation is restored, all the animals shall obey and be in subjection to man, and revert to the food originally given by God, for they had been originally subjected in obedience to Adam. That is the productions of the earth. For some, but some other occasion, and not the present, is to be sought for showing that the lion shall then feed on the straw. And this indicates the large size and rich quality of the fruits. For if that animal, the lion, feeds upon the straw at that period, of what a quality must the wheat itself be, whose straw shall serve as suitable food for lions? Listen to what he's saying. Again, I'll go back. He says, I'm aware that some persons endeavor to refer to these words to the case of savage men, both of different nations and various habits, who come to believe, and when they have believed, act in harmony with the righteous. What he's saying is that some men interpret this allegorically, to not literally be about lions getting along with lambs, okay, and kids being able to hang out with snakes. He's saying that that's metaphorical for referring to the harmony among the nations that the gospel will produce. And I've heard millennial brethren, and I'm sure some of our post-millennial brethren would say that too, that's how they take this. Now, Irenaeus says, but although this is true, now, with regard to some men coming from various nations to the harmony of their faith, he's saying, yes, that is happening. The gospel has caused peace among nations. He's saying that's true. That is true. He's saying, nevertheless, of the resurrection of the just, these words shall apply to those animals mentioned. So, Irenaeus is saying, while it is true now that nations are in harmony, and maybe even Irenaeus is conceding some allegorical application in this age, he's saying there is yet a literal interpretation to be had. See, I think premillennialism is the only position that has a literal, takes a literal view of this, that lions and lambs are going to be hanging out. I actually haven't asked any postmillennialists this, but when the world is Christianized according to their understanding, do they actually believe this kind of stuff is going to happen? I don't know. It'd be a fair question, and you can comment. But premillennial believes that the animal kingdom is going to be restored in the millennial kingdom. The animal kingdom will be restored to its former state. Predators and herbivores, carnivores and herbivores, animals that eat other animals and animals that eat plants are going to be getting along. That's literally going to happen in Christ's kingdom, and that's what Irenaeus is arguing for. And he says, when the creation is restored, all the animals shall obey and be in subjection to man, and revert to the food originally given by God. But some other occasion and not the present is to be sought. So in other words, Irenaeus is saying this is not being fulfilled in this age. There is a future age where this is to be fulfilled. All right, so look, there's a lot there. I think that's enough. He's got a lot more, so I'll probably do another video on Irenaeus because I have more stuff to cover, but I think it's too much for this video. So I will plan to do another video in this series, just finishing up what Irenaeus said. But I want you to think over these things. I want you to mull over these things. What are these guys saying? What are these guys saying? And again, you hear the objection. Well, early church premillennialism wasn't dispensationalism. So what? It certainly wasn't. We certainly don't see the documentation for postmillennialism that we see for premillennialism. So why don't we talk about the kind of premillennialism that we should have, that's biblical? That's where I think the focus needs to be, not pushing premillennialism to the corner. Okay? And I know the early church fathers said some things that are not in line with dispensational thought today. Like I said, my cards are on the table. I'm a progressive dispensationalist. But let's talk about premillennialism. Let's talk about let's start having a discussion about what biblical premillennialism is. Because I think that's where we need to focus. And not just putting premillennialism to the corner. I don't understand that. But I love all you post-millennial and non-millennial brothers. Just like Justin Martyr, respected his other brothers of a different opinion. But just want to show a little bit of the historical precedent for the premillennial view. Thanks for listening to the Torcoffee channel. I will plan to do another video on Irenaeus. Thank you for listening today. Hey, love you, my brothers. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.